Process. Always admire how he can kind of end a long season and just dive right into our process. But as always, just a pure joy to work with side by side. And that's my brother, man. So really appreciate what he does. Our area scouts, they are truly the engine that make this thing go. I got a lot of respect for the work that they do, the time that they put in. They know more about these players in their area more than anybody else in this building. And they're not just collecting information, they watch more tape than anybody in our building. So I highly, value their opinions and their evaluations. So they're huge in our process. Wouldn't be able to do it without them. We have an OTT crew with Ray Agnew and Lance Newmark, John Dorsey, Mike Martin, Don Corzine. They've been doing it for a long time. They got a lot of experience. I really respect how they work. It's a great group, very cohesive group. They tee it up really nice for me, and so really appreciate their efforts. All the hours that we watching film, I'd probably be spooked if I saw an actual log of all the hours, but our video department, they do a great job in terms of, it's efficient, it's smooth. They make sure everything's available to us. So really, really appreciate everything that they do. Our coaching staff, they play a huge role in our process. They're great teachers, and once we get them, they have to teach them. And so they play a huge role in our process. So really appreciate the time that they put in because it's not just scouting. Those guys are still getting ready for the season. So really appreciate everything that they do. And, our scouting assistants, with Alexis and Joe and Blake, it's a lot of operational things, a lot of in-house special projects that we do that they really take great ownership of. So really, really appreciate it. Our player wellness staff, with Jess and Michelle and Sean, appreciate their roles in it. And just a lot of people to thank. Liz Laux, I'm sure she's in here somewhere. She kind of makes the whole thing run pretty smooth and efficient as possible. So does a great job. So a lot of appreciation. There's many others. But as I say all the time, I'm up here, but obviously it's just so many people that are helping out in the process and just want to appreciate their efforts. So with that being said, I'll take any questions that I won't answer. I'm just kidding. But, no, seriously, I hope you guys know that I have a lot of admiration and respect for what you guys do. You guys are a good group. You guys are fair. As a lot of you guys know, I got into this business doing PR even before getting into the NFL, doing, basketball media and being a PR major in college. So I got an up-close view of what your job is, and the public is counting on y'all, your opinions, your information, and so I know how hard it is. So I got a lot of respect for you guys, and I think you guys do a nice job. But we'll take any questions.
When we talked to you in Phoenix, you said it's a little bit unusual. You hadn't fully identified that cluster of players you liked at 6. I imagine you are at that point now. What went into the last 3 weeks to kind of get you from that point to now?
Yeah, and I'll still say that we're still kind of allowing that to crystallize a little bit. I will say we're closer now than we were at that time, but there's still work to be done. Every draft is different, and just like I told you guys last year, when picking at 2, we kind of pretty much knew what that cluster was at that time, but it's gotten closer, but it's just a lot more film, a lot more research has been done. We've had a lot more meetings since that time. So just all the research and just kind of sticking to our process and just surrendering the results to that. And being confident in our process, that's how I can just kind of always sleep good at night, knowing that we'll come up with the right group.
Does the flexibility that you have in this draft help you also sleep at night because later in the rounds you can move up, you can move down? I mean, does that help you in the thought process moving forward?
Yeah, normally it would. I'll say this draft's a little bit different, but I will say, yes and no. No, because this draft's a little bit different than it was in the past. But I would say yes, because I do feel like we're in a position where we can really do anything we want. I just don't feel like we're pressed. And when I say that, I'm not saying that we have a perfect roster and we don't like. It's not a thing of that. I'm in the mindset of, look, if you think that you're set and you think that you're done and you can go anywhere, I mean, if you take your foot off the gas, you can have problems lurking down the road. So we're just being thorough. We'll be prepared. But I do like the fact that we can pretty much go any direction that we want, and we can feel good about it. Just get the right football player for us.
Brad, why do you say this draft is a little bit different, more unpredictable? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, just a little bit more unpredictable, and it's just having those two picks. They're kind of in unique spots. Just depending on what's going to happen in front of you, what's going to happen behind you. So and then, like I was saying before about kind of where we are right now, I just think we have a lot of flexibility. We can go in a lot of different directions, and we feel good about that. But it's just a little different. Mm-hmm.
How has the NFL changed since then, and are running backs still worth that high of a draft pick?
Yeah, I just kind of look at it as, they're all football players. They're all football players. If they can help you, they can help you. And I understand the narrative about that. But if you think that player is that good, then if he's out there producing for you, then I don't think anybody's going to look back and say, I don't think anybody said in 2016 or 17 or 18 that, oh man, Todd Gurley picked him at 10. Like, no, it's just he was just a really good running back, and he was one of the top prospects in the draft. So yeah, we didn't really bat an eye about it.
You guys have built a lot on culture and the type of players that you get here. At what point does risk tolerance start to grow? And whether it's red flag players or whatever, different type of players, do you have to watch the line there between culture and talent? Do you have to cross it at times?
Yeah, you always want to make sure that the culture is upheld, and me and Dan say it all the time. These players have to fit here. It's not like we gotta chase this player. But with the red flags or whatever, like I've always said, it's always case by case. I know you guys are probably tired of me saying that, but it's just true. I've been part of drafts in the past that the headline didn't look as good. And I wish it was that easy. Like, I really wish it was that easy just to read the headline and say, oh, no, you got to do it. No, you got to dive deep. You got to dive deep, because at the end of the day, you got human beings evaluating other human beings, and it's just a lot more work. It goes so deep. So everything's case by case. And, some of those players in the past that I've been part of that the headline didn't look as good, and then you dove deep, and then you said, oh, and they were really key contributors and trusted guys in our locker room. So it's just a lot of work that's done, and we just do the work.
First question, how much do you feel like you improved from draft 1 to draft 2 being in the lead role? And the second part of the question is, you've been known to trust your gut in the past. How much do you trust your gut, like, really in those later rounds? So that's really been the steal of really seeing how good a GM could be. What do you think, how do you trust your gut in moments like that to get some of those guys like Rodrigo and, just some of the guys who got in the later rounds?
Yeah, so first part of the question, obviously year one, I was still learning. You always think that, you're ready for the job and you're excited, but there's things that's going to come up that you're not going to experience until you're in that fire. And so there are some things, some details here and there that I experienced for the first time. I was like, whoa, okay, I'll be ready for the next time. So I just feel like I was a lot more prepared for kind of what was coming, even before the draft's coming, during the draft. You got to move in, move out, all that stuff. You've seen it done, at all those times, but I was with the Rams and watching less, but then when you're in it, and then you okay, that's how it goes. And so I think the experience helped from year 1 to year 2, and I just think your gut is, regardless of the round, I just think your gut is always going to be, you can look at all the data and the research, and we scrub it and we dive deep, but at the end of the day, if it does not feel right, it's a little difficult whichever round. It could be in the 7th round. If you have to make that phone call to that kid to tell me he's going to be a Detroit Lion, you want to feel confident about it. You don't want to have any nervousness about it. So, that's just where the gut piece comes in at. And I've always trusted it, and I still trust it.
There's
kind of buckets with prospects. There's production, there's intangibles, and there's traits. We know kind of how you feel about production and intangibles. When it comes to a prospect where traits are kind of the calling card for what he's about, is there something about them that you look at him and you say that's developable? Is there characteristics about prospects where you feel comfortable with traits driving your decision?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you hit it. I mean, all those buckets, not to be overlooked, but yeah, the physical traits. I mean, you know, they're higher in some positions. They're more important in some positions. At other positions, it's a little bit. You can kind of get by with the physical traits might not be as good, but what I call this kind of the central nervous system wiring is a little bit higher. So there's a balance, but it is the NFL. You do have to have a balance of athleticism, a baseline of athleticism. Some positions you got to have a baseline of length. There's some positions that you got to have a baseline there of speed, explosiveness. So that's not overlooked at all. And my staff, they do a great job of bringing that up to me a lot because I can tend to go towards just, man, as long as he's playing football, but you got to be aware, it is the NFL, and you got to make sure that these guys are able to match up physically. I hope that if that answers your question about physical traits.
Woj's question about the risk tolerance, and this may fall into one of those that you don't want to answer, but I'm not asking for like your draft board. How do the headlines and Jalen Carter compare to the person that you come to know through your process, bringing him in, whatever?
Yeah, he came in, he did a nice job, and yeah, again, it's always case by case. Came in, we enjoyed our time with him, did a nice job, and I'll say even after he left his visit, I felt better about him.
Part of the flexibility you have comes from what you got out of last year's class. Can you just reflect on that group for a minute and the impact they had on your team, particularly look at the end of the year? You had 5 rookies playing significant snaps on an improving defense.
Yeah, it goes back to that gut that you have as a football player when you selected them, but also it goes to our coaching staff. Like I say all the time, they can accelerate some development there, so we're really fortunate there. But it's those guys put the time in. Those guys stays dedicated. Those guys were very coachable. They put the work in. Like I said earlier, I probably said it after the draft. We were really excited about all the guys we had, but look, man, those guys are rookies, so they're going to need some time to learn. And then all those contributors on defense, if you look at kind of how that season went, obviously you don't like what the final ranking was on defense, but if you look at when we started going on that run, when that last 8 out of 10, you can't play bad defense to do that. Some tough games up on the road, and those guys just learn to play. Those guys just learn the game, and that's just a normal maturation process of rookies. But I appreciate all those guys, and I'm even more excited about the jump that they're going to make from year 1 to year 2.
Understanding that they have to do that and they have to continue to grow. When you see a class like that come in and do it, does that give you even more confidence in your process as a staff?
Yeah, it does because, you actually see the proof in the pudding. You can always feel good about it until it actually you see it happen, and obviously, we weigh all the worst case scenarios, best case scenarios. But yeah, you feel good about if you can get, a Malcolm Rodriguez or a James Houston that, in the 6th round that can contribute like the way that they did. But it doesn't change our process in any way. But you're just happy that what those guys were able to produce, and hopefully we can kind of make some hay like that again.
Brad, you said in your first draft here you wanted to get all your picks in the first 5 rounds because there was a drop-off after that. Was there anything similar in this year's draft where there's a drop-off point where you want to make sure you get your...
Say that one more time.
In your first draft here, you said you wanted to get all your picks in the first 5 rounds, and you did because there was a drop-off of quality after that. Was there anything similar in this year's draft at all?
I'd probably say not as similar this year. Again, it's just a different draft this year. It just is. Position strengths and volumes at certain positions are just different from years past. So you just got to weigh all of that. So, but again, it doesn't really change our approach at all. It's just you just gotta accept the reality of that, and then you just adjust from there.
Mentioned having the flexibility with your first couple picks. Also, having 4 picks in the first 2 rounds and doing what you've done in the offseason, winning 8 out of 10. Can you just share what an opportunity this is for this franchise at this point? Because you don't usually get this many picks.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely want to take advantage of having this kind of capital. You don't, you're not going to put too much pressure on yourself, but it is a unique opportunity. Those opportunities don't come every year. So you want to take advantage as much as you can. But again, we're just focused on our process in this draft, and regardless of what we did in free agency, regardless of how we ended the season, again, we just got to just stay aggressive still, just keep our foot on the gas and just make sure that we're acquiring the best players. But it does feel good that we have this opportunity with this capital that we have.
Significant move last week, trading Jeff.
I'm gonna get to your question.
Okay, no problem.
Go ahead.
You made a significant move last week. What went into the decision to move on from Jeff?
Yeah, I just think it was the right time. It was just the right time, and I think it was good for Jeff. I had a good talk with him, after it was done, and he totally understood it as well. So it was great. I really respect what Jeff did. We kind of put him in some adverse moments in training camp last year, and just like I told you guys, I really respected how he battled and didn't bat an eye, and won a starting job. So and we had the conversation of, okay, if this didn't happen now, is there a chance that it could happen a little bit later? So I think it was just good for Jeff. I got a lot of respect for Terry out there in Atlanta. It was a really smooth, efficient process. And it kind of just came up, again, like I was telling you guys about the Hawkinson trade, I wasn't making a ton of calls, and I wasn't, actively shopping or anything like that. You get the call, and sometimes it just lines up and it makes sense for all parties, and it just did.
You said at the end of last season you thought you guys got caught a little bit short at quarterback, backup quarterback, just wheezed to the finish line.
Yeah.
In the offseason, you haven't signed another backup yet. A lot of them have gone off the market, and is that a sign or an indication that you maybe do have to look for a quarterback in this draft somewhere, or do you still see a backup or somebody out there?
Well, we ended up re-signing Nate Sudfeld. So and I know that doesn't raise the excitement because it's a name that's already been here, and but yeah, we did re-sign Nate, and just like I said at the owners meetings, going through free agency, Nate was one of the few guys that we kind of were looking at to fill that backup role. So it just didn't work out with some of those other guys. But we were happy to get Nate back. But again, it just goes back to the flexibility that we have in this draft in terms of we're not pressed. Obviously, we like what Nate did. That's why we signed him back. But we're not pressed, we're not pinched. If it works out, it lines up, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we'll be fine. We got 2 QBs in the roster now, and we'll definitely have a third at some point.
Quarterback is even playing in this draft, obviously, at some point.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's a position on the football field that you got to have, So, and I'm not trying to be a smartass about that, but no, it's we'd like to add another one. Now, whether it's through the draft, whether it's after the draft, just like I talked about to you guys probably in Arizona, that some of these quarterbacks, they're waiting till after the draft to see what teams do. Guys that have had a lot more experience, so that's always a possibility. But we won't be pinched, we won't be forced to do anything that doesn't line up and doesn't match. But we'll get by training camp, when we get in there, we'll make sure that we'll have another quarterback at some point.
How much of the uncertainty is based on where some of those quarterbacks will go up top? I don't know, how good a feel do you have, I guess, for maybe where those 4 guys will go, or 5 guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the best that we can. You don't have the absolute crystal ball. You just got to just do all the research, and we we brought some quarterbacks in and did our just due on them. And just like I've been saying all the time, when you're picking the top 10, you just want to make sure that you're pretty thorough on the quarterback market. And I believe that we have done that. And so we have a good idea. It's always going to be a surprise on draft night. That's what makes it fun. But we'll definitely be prepared and got an idea, but just don't know if a curveball might be thrown.
You're always in tune with mock drafts. You use them to do your own simulations, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, there was kind of a big whiff with national analysts on how they viewed those quarterbacks. Just wondering, as you're kind of working through what national pundits are saying this year, do you see any gaps with your perceptions of how this thing might shake out versus kind of where the top 50, the consensus top 50 is ranking?
I mean, if I'm laughing at mocks or anything like that. No, look, it's a hard job. I respect them just because I know a lot of work and thought is put into it, and a lot of people are talking to different people, externally or even inside buildings, and so I know that there's some of that information that is real. So that's why it's you probably should look at it, but then there's a lot of information that I don't expect the people that are putting out the mock drafts to know, and it's not their fault. They're not they're not in medical meetings. They're not there's not in, so it's yeah. So I look at them, I respect them, but it's not always going to be right, and then you just gotta just make the best pick that you can, and be confident with it, and post-draft, immediate draft grades, when the pick didn't line up with those mocks, you got to be willing and comfortable to take the, thrashing because they didn't line up with the mock, so it's all good.
Increased expectations and the national hype surrounding the Lions. I'm just wondering if you give us a little bit of sense of what Sheila's been thinking now as the last 6 months have progressed following the end of the season.
Yeah, I know she's excited. She's really excited. I think she's really proud of kind of where we are at it as an organization. Just kind of how the process has gone along since the season ended. With that big win up in Green Bay, I know that meant the world to her. Getting the game ball, that was awesome. But how free agency went, and just kind of this process leading up to the draft. She's excited. Was talking with her the other day, and I think she's confident about the place that we're at right now and headed into this draft. But yeah, it's always happy to see her excited. Always happy to see her excited. That's what we do it for. And one day you just want to put that trophy in her hand. And so that's what me and Dan are striving to do.
Part of the job is not embarrassing her, embarrassing the organization, right? So when you are weighing characteristics in the draft, I mean, I imagine she's in tune with what you guys are doing. Do you run those by her preemptively to kind of talk about your thinking if the scenario presents itself where that person's available?
Yeah, no, I mean that's part of my job is to make sure that she's informed. So if we go that route of acquiring a player that may stir some headlines, you definitely want to make sure that she's aware, and that's kind of how we've always ran our process and our approach. And she's an excellent listener. She sees things all big picture, and she has a lot of wise counsel. And so obviously you wouldn't do anything to compromise our culture or the integrity or put her in a bad spot or the organization in a bad spot. So definitely make sure that all things are communicated with her, especially when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Automatically disqualified them.
I mean, I've never brought up a situation to her that I felt like it was a go, and she was like, no. We've never experienced that before. It's times that I was like, no, and I told her, the reason why I was no, and she was on board with it. But, I haven't had a situation where it was reversed. But I think the reason, like, we're so collaborative in everything that we do, and she has so much trust in what me and Dan's process is and how we're building the team. And it's very comforting. It's very appreciative, but we just haven't experienced that yet.
I'm curious, you took some medical risks, I guess, maybe in round 2 of the last couple of drafts, and maybe that's part of why they were there. I don't know. The fact that they've had limited production so far, it's early, obviously, but how, if at all, has that affected your philosophy of maybe what you do in that round?
Yeah, we try to do the best we can, and look, let me say, like, in the past, I think I might have addressed you guys after training camp about just knowing about a player's medical. I know about all players' medical before we acquire a player, but there's just some unfortunate things that may happen, after you acquire them, so, and you got to just live with that. So I don't want to sit here and say that, we knew that Josh Pascal was going to have to get, like, you know what I mean? Like, we didn't know, like, oh man, I can't wait to get Josh Pascal because I know he's going to be gone for, like, no, I'm not. But, but we just make the best decision for the player. Same with Levi, you just make the best decision, and something happens afterwards, you just deal with it, and you just got to just work to make the decision work, and that's what we do, and both of those guys are in good places right now, but it doesn't really change anything. You just kind of be as thorough as you can. We have a good medical team. Obviously, we've had some transition there in that department, as you guys know of, and they kind of came in a tough time around the combine and medicals and all that stuff. But Brett and Mike and Dr. Lynch, they've done a great job, and we just had some meetings, and they went very smooth and seamless. A lot of great information. Still working through some of it a little bit still, but it doesn't change the approach. You just want to be as thorough as possible and be prepared for anything.
You said you could go. You like that you could go in pretty much any direction in this draft. Obviously, have plug some holes on defense or what. Is it almost weird to say that? Can you actually identify what your biggest weakness or your biggest need is?
I mean, I think every team, including us, every team's going to have something. It's going to have something. Regardless of how good you feel about the front line, when you look at the 2 deep, all right, well, we get to get a little bit better there. And then if you feel really good about your 2 deep, then it's like, okay, what about your 3rd? You know what I mean? Like, it's always going to be something that, you're going to have to address. But, yeah, obviously we did a lot of things on defense in free agency. And there's a lot of good defensive players in this draft. So we feel pretty comfortable. But, again, I just can't pinpoint one position where we're just like, oh my gosh, we don't do that. It's, you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's a lot of different directions we can go. Again, we're not perfect. We still got a lot of work to do. We understand that. We know that. We embrace it. I always tell people all the time, I embrace darkness. I embrace reality. And we're like kind of used to taking the hard road and through the narrow gate. So, you're always gonna have to deal with stuff, but we just deal with it and try to build it the best as we can. And you don't always have to just look at. I talked about the depth chart thing. About drafting with the depth chart. You don't really do that. We don't do that in our place. But now free agency, you can take that approach. Those guys are developed. Those guys have been playing in the league. You can look at a depth chart. You can plug it in. But when you get to drafting players, it's a big investment. It's a long-term approach. And so a little bit like when we took Jamison Williams. Obviously he was coming off his injury, but I didn't really care if he played last year. If he did, he did. I'm glad he did, but I was looking for this year. So you just gotta take the best player, and the best player that fits us, and that's what we'll do.
Speaking of Jamison, you made kind of a general comment at the combine that high expectations, but he's got to do his part too. I think you probably say that about anybody on the roster, but
yeah,
volunteer workouts right now. Just based on the photos you guys posted, doesn't look like he's here.
Yeah.
Any concern on your part with meshing with that statement?
He was just here yesterday, so yeah.
I was just curious about the collaborative process. Maybe could you shed a little more light? Like, I know you guys have talked about that for 3 years now, but is there veto power, for lack of a better word? You know what I mean? Like if you like somebody, Dan doesn't, or Dan likes somebody, you don't, you just put them aside and sort of move on to find somebody you like. How does that sort of, I don't know, work in this process? I guess?
Yeah, kind of like the question asked earlier about with Sheila, if she shoots down a player that I like or anything like that. Me and Dan, we see things eye to eye, and we're cut from the same cloth. We see players the same. It's rarely an experience that has come up where I liked a player and he did not. And if that did happen, it always turns into a learning experience. So it ends up being a win-win either way. But it's just there's no like we got to have buy-in, man. We got to buy-in. Like I'm not gonna draft a player that he doesn't like. And you know what I mean? Like I've been in regimes that I've seen that happen where a player's drafted that coach wasn't on board with, and it doesn't really meet up to the visions of success that you had for that player because the coach has to have buy-in in it, and you know our assistant coaches, they live with these players. They have to teach them, they have to develop them, so you want that buy-in. But yeah, I mean that really doesn't happen really with us because just because we just see players eye to eye, we see players the same. We have the same vision, we're aligned. So, and again, the really rare cases that it's happening, because it has happened, it was always a good learning experience, and we sharpen each other's iron, and we go from there. Yeah.
My question was kind of in that same ballpark because you talked about being the culture that's being built here, and you want to make sure that's uphill. Do you think there'll come a point in time where there is a player that is out there that is so talented that because of the culture that's being built here, you just want to go ahead and bring him in the room and see if you can get him to embrace that culture?
Yeah, that's a good question, Corey. It's really, again, Colton, it's case by case still. It's just you can have a good locker room, you can have a good culture, and it just depends on what those issues are with that player. Is it just a maturity thing that he just needs to learn, or is it this or that? So, but again, it's just I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I don't know what else to say. It truly is case by case, But so we like our locker room. We feel like we do have a good, strong locker room. So if you have a player that has some concerns, yeah, there's some guys that you can bring in and like it's going to be fine. Some guy that you might be like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to work. So it's just case by case always. Eric, what you had?
What kind of your routine to help you get the groove of the draft?
Yeah, like year one is like it was almost like a prank being played on me a little bit. Like, well, not a prank because no one told me, but you know how like you're invited to a party and it's like casual dress, but someone tells you like you better put on a tuxedo, and you know what I mean, you show up with a tuxedo, you're the only one. Everybody's got Tommy Bahama shirts on and stuff like that. Year one, I think just because I was so like, all right, let me make sure that everything is done right. Man, I showed up so early at the building on draft day, man. I showed up like at freaking like 8:30, 9 a.m. and I'm calling all these other GMs, just kind of do some last minute checkups, and they're all taking walks with their wives, they're shooting hoops, and it's like 12 o'clock. I'm like, dude, what are y'all doing? So I definitely learned my lesson. So I kind of switched it up to my normal kind of routine. Last year I did kind of what I do usually in the morning in terms of just working out and meditating and spending time with my family and all that stuff. I just kind of spread that out a little bit more and give myself a little bit more time. So definitely learned a lesson from year one for sure.
Hey, Brad, while we're talking about personal style, where can we get those villain hoodies? I mean, is that in the Brad Holmes line? I mean, where can we get?
Hey, look, so it was funny. I was just talking to somebody about like it's up in our draft room, and in the past we've kind of kept that lock key, and then once the whole thing at the combine came up with the hoodie, and they're trying to make preparations on draft day, and in the past we would have kind of just blocked it out, and I said just let the villain go. The whole world knows about it, so just the whole world doesn't know what it truly means, but in terms of the merch, in terms of the availability of it, I can't really speak to that, but I do like the do like the fire that it started. It's been pretty cool. I didn't think it was gonna happen. That wasn't my intention, but it's been pretty cool to see the reaction that everybody's kind of bought into the villain theme. So yeah, we'll just keep it going, and we'll just kind of handle the merch part of it as we see fit. Huh? Can't say that. Hey, listen, it's a cool hoodie, man. Yeah. What's that?
But the wardrobe choice today could not run more counter to the message.
Oh, yeah. A little bit different, but shout out to Lindsay, our CPO. She does a great job. So shout out to her. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it.